Well, good evening and good afternoon and good morning to everyone. I know that we're here from all sorts of different time zones. We appreciate everyone for making the time. This is, as I was saying before, it's a unique hour that we're going to be spending. We usually spend this time, for those that are not familiar, every Wednesday at this exact time. We have a discussion around technical topics within what we're working on, what we're planning on releasing. And there's Guardian users that are communicating back and forth about what they would like to see, what they think, their ideas, so on and so forth. This call is going to be a little bit different, where we're going to be discussing the roadmap of the next phase of the Guardian. So every 6 months, we like to introduce the next phase, the next technical topics that we're going to be working on. And that's what this call is all about. There is a working doc out there for anyone that wants to follow along. I believe it's in the Slack channel. If you don't have access to it, just send a message over to Prina or to myself or to Andre, and we're more than happy to go ahead and pass that along. Yeah, Prina, if you can you go to the next slide? So I know that many of you already know who we are, but I know that there's some folks that are from outside of the usual meetings here. So just quick introduction. I'm Dan Orkin. I'm one of the co-founders here at Envision Blockchain. We've been open since the early part of 2018, and we build applications in the Web3 space. Specifically, we are the builders and maintainers of the Guardian. So Prina, can you go to the next slide? And we're going to be talking about the Guardian the whole time, but just in case you haven't heard of the Guardian, there's really a need for addressing carbon market issues such as fragmented reporting, verification, data integrity issues. There's high costs of verification. There's lack of real-time data. So this is where we wanted to come together and put together the platform called the Guardian. And we have here a screenshot of the kind of like the core of the Guardian, which is the policy workflow engine. And you can see that there's different boxes here, different colors, different elements that you see on the left side of the screen, on the right side of the screen. And this is a coded version of a methodology that contains all the actors within a methodology workflow, all the permissions, all the actions, events, approvals, notifications. And you can think of this policy workflow engine like a place where you can stack together some of your Lego blocks and create your digital version of a methodology. Okay, Prina, can you go to the next slide? So we put together the latest and greatest with all the technologies in the Web3 space. For example, we're using W3C decentralized identifiers so that every actor has a unique identity, and attached to them with the MRV data, as you can see right here on the screenshots. We're showing some of the verifiable credentials. These are the digital documents that are linked to these DIDs. And this entire chain, you can think of it as a verifiable presentation, which is a collection of one or more of the verifiable credentials. Essentially, when you put this together, we call this the trust chain. Obviously, this is sitting on top of the public ledger on the Hedera hash graph. And just like we mentioned before, that at the core of this entire Guardian is a policy workflow engine, which is, again, a low-code, no-code editor with fully configurable and human-readable logic blocks. And it's accessible through either the user interface, through APIs. The entire platform is. So more than happy to get you onboarded on here if you're not currently using it, and see how this can accelerate the use case that you're working on. Can we go to the next slide? So just to quickly talk about some of the community statistics that we have here. If you're not part of any of these calls and you're looking to get involved, we're more than happy to send you invites. So for example, there's weekly ecological vocabulary calls. There's 97 total members that are invited. There's weekly technical discussion calls. This is happening on the Wednesdays that I was just telling you about. There's currently 227 members that are invited, just to give you an idea of the type of open source repository metrics that we have here. So just between October 28th and November 11th, there's been 237 total clones and 2979 total visitors. Go to the next slide. So just we like to put a grouping on what the next 6 months, as we call the next phase of the Guardian, is going to feel like, what it's all about. As you can see, that the team is going to be talking about really more topics than we can fit within 6 months. So this is where we really need to get some of the community's prioritizations. There's going to be upwards of 40 or 41 different work topics that we're going to really quickly breeze through over here. But just to give you an idea, the next phase of the Guardian project is going to predominantly focus on enhancing this blockchain functionality and user experience, as we always want to make sure that the user experience is really great. So the potential work topics, again, because we literally can't fit everything in that we're going to be presenting, it ranges from improving NFT compatibility, policy management, smart contract integration, to advancing user interface designs and security features, again, all within the Guardian ecosystem. The central themes across these topics include optimizing blockchain data indexing, environmental asset management, digital identity control, policy evolution, all aimed at enhancing interoperability, efficiency, and security, again, within this Guardian application. Without further ado, I believe I'm going to pass this on to Prina and Andre to go ahead and introduce the work topics. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, as well as Prina and Andre will as well. They are the product team here with the Guardian here with Envision. You guys are in good hands. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Raise your hand. We want to call on you if you have any questions around what's happening. I will just make a little caveat that if conversation gets to be too long, we're going to just ask to park and lot that, and we're going to keep it going, because we have, I could see here, 41 different work topics to go ahead and crush through. With that in mind, I think I'm going to pass it on to Prina.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining. And so, as Daniel was mentioning, we are the Guardian product team, and we would just like to go over the next phase items, what we want to, and we need your help in deciding and prioritizing if there are any urgent requirements for your use case and if what you're looking for Guardian. So here, as you see, we have 41 worker topics we wanted to discuss about. As we cannot cover all of it in an hour meeting, what we will be doing is we'll be actually first discussing the newer ones, what we thought would be much more helpful. So we'll be discussing that first, and then we do have added the old worker topics which we already discussed in our last roadmap meeting. So we'll just give you guys an overview of what those topics were, but we'll be going in detail with the newer worker topics. So that's what we thought that would be a good solution to cover in an 1 hour meeting. So here, as you can see, we have 41 worker topics, and which covers from all the enhancement which Daniel mentioned in the last slide, that we'll be focusing on the policy configuration, enhancement, management, security, and other aspects. So I'll just go ahead and go with the first worker topic. I would pass the ball to Andre to just quickly give an overview.
Thank you, Prina. I will cover in summary all the worker topics that are presented here today, and I would ask you to maybe note the questions, but don't ask the questions at this meeting, and let's maybe discuss them. I don't think we will have time today. I would suggest maybe send the questions in Slack or in chat, and then we'll get to them, as Daniel pointed out. So this ticket or worker topic is to bring Guardian's implementation of the Hedera NFT concept, to make it aligned with all other implementations of Hedera NFT concepts, as well as maybe adjust the actual standard NFT standard in Guardian to accommodate the things that were for Guardian to work. And that's what we've done, and that's why it's not 100% compatible, and that's required. So Guardian produced NFTs, which represent environmental assets, can be immediately worked with by various other tools like user wallets, for example. So an NFT that Guardian produces would be displayed currently in a user wallet, but it might not look as nice, and you might not be able to perform all the other operations, even if you own the NFT using the wallet, because of this slight incompatibility. So that's what we are trying to resolve with this. So that's the worker topic 1. Moving on to the next slide, please, Prina. This worker topic is the continuation of the work that we've done in the last 6 months, where I think this particular issue we dealt with about 2 months ago. or 2 releases ago. And this is to do with the ability to compare different policies and search different policies for similarities. So we scoped that functionality for the stage that is ending now to a single instance of Guardian. So this ticket or this work would be done to extend that capability to the entire ecosystem. As a result, when that work is done, users would be able to find similar policies or policies that feature particular elements in the policy that you're looking for when you're authoring the policy. For example, if it was produced and published by any other instance out there in the ecosystem at any point in time, it might be old or new. So it's extending that scope to the entire ecosystem rather than a local Guardian instance. Moving on to the next topic, please. This is a similar approach, but in a slightly different way. Again, it's a continuation of the work that we've done, or the evolution of the capability that we've introduced in the last 6 months, or in this ending stage of Guardian development. And that's to do with comparing not policies, but the data that's produced by policies. So at the moment in Guardian, you can compare documents that are produced by a policy or different policies, and the Guardian will intelligently compare it, not syntactically, but semantically will compare the documents and ignore the irrelevant elements like IDs. For example, of course, you can switch on the ticket there saying compare IDs as well, but by a standard, it will highlight the differences for you and will create a sort of similarity score. But once again, this is done on a single element, on a document by document. What we would like to do with this work is introduce the ability to compare like trust chains, which are composed of these documents, or subsections of trust chains. So you'd be able, for example, a particular policy executed to trust chain and another version of similar policy executed some data, maybe worked on the same data. You'd be able to compare the trust chains and see that maybe gaps or differences and see how similar the policies were, basically. Moving on to the next slide, please. All right, so this is a kind of an extension of that search concept that we talked just a little bit earlier, but it is an ability or a technology that would allow to quickly search and display various data that's in policies, environmental data, documents, VC documents, NFTs, fungible tokens of anything that's produced by Guardian, any environmental related items produced by the Guardian across the entire ecosystem quickly and efficiently. It's an indexer, you're familiar, I'm sure, with the concept of blockchain indexer from Hedera or other ecosystems, but this one is a specialist indexer for the environmental data only. Moving on. Again, please, Brina. Disaster recovery. This is an extension of the work or evolution of the work that we've done before. At the moment, disaster recovery in Guardian is, you've got 2 modes of disaster recovery. If you've got a Guardian instance, for example, and you regularly create backups, there's an automated system where you can restore the backup to a new instance of the Guardian and operate that as an instance from that point where the backup was taken. If there is no backup, you can restore an instance of the Guardian from the data that's stored in the distributed storage in IPFS and Hedera, immutable distributed storage. But there are some limitations there. And the limitation is mostly to do with being able to continue the policy execution. So at the moment, you can restore the data, you can view data, you can see trust chains and everything, but you can't continue policy execution. If there is a project that's been in development, you would need to start it or restart it from the point where it is now as new, effectively. So this ticket proposes the creation of save points in the execution of the policy, where you can then even if you restore it from the distributed storage, you can restart the execution of the policy and the project from that save point on. Yeah, it's an improvement. It allows you to continue running the project in the case of disaster, and disaster means the complete collapse of all backups. Maybe a data center where Guardian was running got flooded and stuff, and all the backups as well, which is unlikely to happen, but possible. Okay, moving on to the next one, please, Prina. Work topic 6. Yes. So this, as what Daniel mentioned earlier, this work topic targets the usability or the ease of creation of policies for policy authors. We have been steadily enhancing that experience for policy authors with various suggestion tools, for example, and like syntax highlighting tools, even some of the earlier tickets that we discussed to do with being able to search for examples of how this particular block's been used before or in other policies. This is a slightly different approach. This introduces wizards rather than currently you basically navigate a form. So when this ticket is implemented, you can have this guidance, and wizard would, depending on your answers, would cut out certain maybe workflows, how you might have configured the block, and of course you'd be able to navigate back and forth or switch between wizard and the form view. It's a user experience and ease of creation of policy ticket. Moving on to the next slide, please. Yes, so this workflow is a part of our long-term initiative to move as much functionality of Guardian as possible towards the distributed computing or blockchain or hash graph, Hedera hash graph, and its implementation of Solidity and EVM. So as much of computation and activity as possible is performed by smart contracts. So this is part of that to do with the life cycle of the tokens. At the moment, we manage a sum. We've implemented the contract-based retirement following the changes in permission model of Hedera, and this completes that cycle. We would want to make sure that the trust chain capability as Guardian is compatible with these latest changes. It can display all the life cycle stages of the token once it's been produced. At the moment, it stops at the issuance and doesn't follow later. So moving on, please. Yeah, so this work topic there's been some requests from the community to introduce non-custodial wallets for user custodial wallets. So where the DIDs and their keys are owned and secured by the user, by the individual. At the moment, all the keys are stored in Guardian, and there are various methods how you might want to store it not how you as a user would store it, but you as a provider of Guardian service, you could choose to use HashiCorp Vault for key storage. You could integrate your own system because we've got this API. It's on the code level, but it's integratable with others as well. You'd require to create, or maybe introduce an adapter, maybe it already exists, that the Guardian can use, but it's doable. But this, after this ticket is implemented, it would be possible for users to own and store the keys for DID and sign various operations that the Guardian does on your behalf with another key that is specific for Guardian. So you don't have to give your keys to the Guardian provider somewhere in HashiCorp. Moving on to the next topic, please. So this work topic, it deals with the NFTs and the concept of royalties. It is at the moment, Guardian conceptually focuses on producing an environmental asset and transitioning it to, or transferring it to, the new owner. And effectively, it seems like the people who would own that NFT would be the project developers, and they get an NFT, then they can sell it, and that's it for as far as they're concerned. But the NFT concept and the blockchain concept in general, the thing that's good about this is the enforceable sales model and the royalties that could be introduced. So project developers don't have to focus on the high primary sale model. They can benefit from, let's say, appreciation of assets or the fluidity in the market by taking a small cut every time. And that's a new way of financing those or encouraging those environmental projects to be developed or more widely initiated and developed. So we need to have a think how we could do this. This work topic is about that. Moving to the next one, please. Yes. So we were talking earlier about okay, I think this, sorry, we were talking about the policy comparison previously. Yes, I think, sorry, there were two topics. There were a topic that I was talking earlier to do with policy comparisons that was focusing on the searching, and this is on the comparison to extend the comparison for policies that exist elsewhere. At the moment, in order to diff the policy in detail, not just search and provide score and say this is the policy that's similar, but to actually show you the difference, you need to import the policy into the Guardian instance. It's a little bit heavyweight, and it would be much more user-friendly if that you would be able, let's say you have one policy in your Guardian instance and you found policy somewhere else, and without any import or any such heavyweight operations, you can compare the two, that the other policy lives in some other instance. It seems like a simple thing to do, but actually technologically it's quite a challenge. So that's why we've got a separate ticket for this. So moving on to the next one, please. Yes, that's another ticket that is focused on improving policy authoring experience. It enables automatic verification and sort of suggestion of what might be wrong, but at the moment Guardian deals pretty well with errors. If you've done something completely wrong as a policy author, it'll tell you. It won't accept or create a policy with incorrect settings, with a policy that could never work. But in this particular case, we're talking about slightly milder issues, like in the computer science, you've got those concepts and compilers provide errors, and the errors say it can never work, but warnings suggest it might work in some circumstances, but you might want to pay attention to this because either soon it won't work, like deprecated elements in the policy, or there are some logic errors where you've got elements in the policy, maybe leftovers from your experimentation, that can never be executed, but they are there in the policy and they appear useful, but they just pollute the policy, just create a lot of junk inside the policy, which is not needed. And there are many other circumstances where a policy engine might be able to suggest to the user certain improvements. So that's what this is about. Moving on to the next one, please. Yeah. So we have introduced a policy chaining concept recently in this phase, which is to do with multiple policies united, potentially running on different Guardian instances, united together, working together in a coordinated fashion as almost a single pipeline, where the result would be a token produced on Hedera. And it's all the data is still verifiable and traceable. However, there is no easy way now to actually do that. You would need to either manually verify all the data or go to each Guardian instance and verify the trust chain that is related to that Guardian instance. So this ticket would introduce a capability into Guardian to verify the trust chain for any token, including tokens that have been produced by policy chains. Thank you, Prina, to show policy evolution. Yes, there's another improvement which is related to trust chain, and it's now needed because Guardian is becoming a much more mature product, and we have instances where new versions of the policies being developed and they supersede older versions of the policies. We need to make sure trust chain concept in the Guardian is compatible with these evolving policies, And the evolution flow can be quite complex now. You can have a policy, then the policy version changes maybe substantially, maybe the next version introduces policy chain, for example. All these permutations need to be supported by the trust chain, and again, it's not a simple task. Thank you. Next one, please. Yeah. We've again, in this phase, we've introduced a tool for policy author where Guardian suggests policy elements depending on the example policies that exist in Guardian already. These example policies is not learning as such, and a user is limited to an action to just accept that suggestion or not. But in a similar circumstance, it's always going to be the same suggestion. And there are multiple ways we can improve that concept. Now that we've got the mechanics of it, the logic can be enhanced, and it will be continuously enhanced. So this ticket is to improve that logic, make it more intelligent. Moving on to the next one, please, Prina. Yes. So we've been working very hard on a fairly new concept to Guardian, is its tools, which is compatible with the UNFCCC concept of tools. And it's something in the terms of all Guardian concepts, it's something in between the policy module and the policy. It's a higher level concept abstraction. The most probably fundamental feature of tools is that a tool can contain another tool, and tools are immutable when they insert it inside a policy. It's effectively a reference to something that is immutable. It's a very complex adjustment, and we have done work that allows the creation of policies with tools. But there's a few concepts in Guardian, including the trust chain, that they do support tools, but it's not done in the best way. So we would like, with this work, to introduce additional enhanced support for the concept of tools in trust chain and policy differentiation, as including those new enhancements on a global scale and so on. Moving on to the next one, please, Prina. So we talked about safe points for disaster recovery. This is a different concept, and this different concept is again to improve policy authoring experience. We've got a mode of operation called dry run, where you can execute the policy on sample data, but you wouldn't have to publish anything externally. It pretends it's published in IPFS or send messages in Hedera, but actually it doesn't do that. So it requires you for frequent experimentation with the policy, validation whether it works as expected or not, and so on. But at the moment, every time you do this, you'd need to restart the dry run from the beginning. And it's inconvenient for complex policy development. You may want in the evening go home, and in the morning come back and restart where you were before on this dry run, and so on. What you'd be able to do is to create a save point in a dry run mode, and next time you run, you automatically run everything before that save point and restart the execution of the policy from the save point in the dry run. It just speeds up this experimentation with the policy significantly. So it's a major enhancement, as we ourselves figure out, because we test all the policies and develop them ourselves as well. Moving on. Yes, this is more refactoring perhaps, and also improvement of Guardian. The code base and the sort of the field of concepts in Guardian is becoming quite big. And it's quite difficult for our quality assurance team to, every time we do something, to check everything. And we've noticed some spelling errors occasionally in the UI. And we're expecting that Guardian might need to be translated into different languages, potentially. In order to do this, we would need to refactor and ideally put all the terminology that we use in Guardian UI and inside policy authoring tool into a dictionary where we can automatically check the syntax and grammar, and maybe introduce maybe translated versions of that dictionary so we can apply them if it translated. So we are not planning to translate anything at the moment, but this work will enable that in the future and immediately improve our capability to maintain accurate spelling across the entire Guardian. Yes. So Guardian, we have done a significant rework, a major rework of Guardian retirement implementation. At this time, we're focused on mostly on the back end part of it, the contracts, the logic to enable the actual, not just the retirement, but maybe the creation of exchanges and various other sort of perhaps some other models of trading and so on. But for that we need the foundation of a solid foundation of the life cycle of the token. We would like to introduce many improvements to the Guardian user interface to do with retirement, so it makes it easier for people to actually execute this and manage it. This is a maybe a smaller item, but still a significant item, because it is an improvement for policy authoring tool. So it's just making sure that we use throughout the user interface concepts that are unified across and optimized for human interaction. And at the moment it's not this like that everywhere. So that's the token, that's the ticket. It came from the community, from Dovu in particular. Thank you, Matt. Yes, so that's another community requested ticket. We have many keys that are stored inside Guardian instance. They're stored in a secure manner, or you, as I said earlier, you could customize how they are stored. But security best practices, in fact, in many organizations, internal policies mandate rotating keys at a certain interval, and we would like to enable Guardian administrators or operators to be compliant with those policies easily. It is possible to do now, but it requires a lot of manual work and understanding the insights of Guardian. So we don't want that, and it's error prone, so we would like to improve that. Okay, at the moment it appears that we reached the capacity of the current users and permissions model in Guardian. It's some assumptions that we made early on about how the industry is going to operate and how Guardian is going to be used within organizations were maybe slightly simplistic, and also maybe we didn't realize the complexity maybe fully of the policies that we are going to implement. Now we have much more knowledge of the practical environment where Guardian is deployed, and therefore we need to revisit. Mostly what we need to do is to segregate roles. Well, like standard registry role currently does policy authoring and also approvals and so on. That's in the real world, that's not going to be the same individual, and not even the same group of individuals. It's going to be different departments altogether, it's likely, and even the security requirements for keys storage would probably be different. I would imagine approvals level at a standard registry, there's some reviewer that's going to review the policy after it's been authored by multiple authors, also in a traceable way, is going to be much more significant, much more important key, and therefore that action is going to be much more significant. So we just need to rework this and create many more roles and an interface to manage those roles and assign roles to users and so on. We're on to the next one, please. Yes, thank you. We have introduced a notifications framework to Guardian in this phase. At the moment, the notifications that you'd receive are like by default, they're standard. You have notifications whether you want to receive them or not, because the policy author said you will. As a user, that's not necessarily a desirable state. And with this work, we would like to introduce the capability for users to configure notifications, how they want to receive them, frequency, and so on. Just a sort of a standard way of looking at notifications. You've got that in your iPhone or wherever. Pretty much every system with notifications implements some version of this. We need to introduce that into Guardian as well. Next one, please, Prina. This has been discussed internally between HBAR Foundation and ourselves and various other interested parties. It would be good to enable users to create state proofs, and potentially they can store them themselves on premises, or maybe in some escrow services, I don't know, Iron Mountain or somewhere like that, or elsewhere, or in multiple locations, which would give them full ownership of the data in Hedera, that it would prove certain actions or asset state sort of evolution of its life cycle and so on. Yeah, this ticket would enable users to generate those on demand. Okay, thank you, Prina. All right, Guardian repositories currently, and we encourage you to do, contains many externally developed policies, not internally by Envision or by the Guardian maintenance development and maintenance team, but externally. And please introduce your good policies to the repo as well. However, that state of policies continuously grows, and we introduce new versions of Guardian every month at the moment. Therefore, it needs to be tested, and that the fact that at least we need to identify quickly the policies that have problems. Maybe it's a regression in Guardian, maybe when we were looking at that policy earlier, we haven't noticed certain particularities of the way the policy is created. So we need to have a method of automatically testing those policies and making sure they're all current for every version of Guardian. Moving on, please, Prina. There are certain things that we could add to synchronize the backend and the front-end layer for in the area of retirement. As I said, we've mostly focused on producing a rock-solid backend, the foundation for the entire world, hopefully, of applications using these tokens, but that produced by Guardian. But we need to enhance the way events in Hedera on tokens represented in the Guardian, because this is most of the stuff happens in Guardian, and when it comes out of Guardian, it's immutable. It's on APFS and Hedera, but with tokens and their retirement, produce a token, Guardian remembers the state of the token, so on, but then things can happen to that token from outside the Guardian. Somebody can sell it, retire it, and transition it, and Guardian needs to be able to be current and display the current status to the users. And it's not a trivial task. It's doable, but clearly we've got a plan to do it, but it requires attention. So hence this ticket. Moving on to the next one, please, Prina. Yes, so this ticket is this ticket, we have policy changing currently, but the way the policies interact is effectively sort of one-way flow of events. One policy chain produces an artifact, and another one consumes the artifact and produces another artifact, and then the other one consumes, and so on. However, the actual real-world complexity of policies and the ability to maybe deploy a distributed Guardian policy require more tooling, mostly to do with the workflow coordination across the Guardian instances. And we've got these tools within a single Guardian instance, notifications, status updates, and so on. So you could see it in UI. But what we need to do is to adapt those to work across multiple Guardian instances. And this is what this ticket targets. Next topic, please. This is a product of multiple conversations that we had across the ecosystem, and it's put in here to address multiple issues that some of them have been community reported. Notable one is to do with the number of tokens incorrect number of tokens minted. Some of them we've observed or frequently observed internally, and it's to do with the way Guardian, Hedera SDK, and Hedera processes requests, and there are multiple points of failure that can generate complex error situations with which at the moment Guardian doesn't cope very well, or I don't know if other applications do. But in case of Guardian, we found those issues, and we attempted previously to solve it simply. It turns out that every time we solve it, we think we've solved it, a new error situation comes up which is not covered by our solution. So we need to address this as a project and create an enterprise grade system that would allow Guardian application to easily interact with, and with certain guarantees interact with Hedera, and not think about retries and evaluation of the state and so on. That needs to be handled in that layer. So this is what that ticket is about. So this ticket is, I think Christian, if he is present here, would probably be quite happy to see in the list. This ticket is to target very complex cases, but they are real world cases where the amount of MRV data and the transformations that need to happen with the MRV data are too complex, and but very important. And the verifiability of those transformations is also very important. And what we would end up with if we just use Guardian is a large volume of potentially small, sometimes maybe big data recorded in IPFS, and literally every evolution of the data would need to be produced a document. The document is uploaded in IPFS, message is sent in Hedera. And if we are talking about database scale of data volume, I don't know, terabytes of data, like, I don't know, Oracle databases store, and that's just the data. But we are talking about every state of that data. So this data has been updated, it's been like transformed in some way, then it becomes a much, much bigger, probably not solvable problem if we consider a reasonable time frame. So we are looking for a way to deal with data, not just in IPFS and as a verifiable credentials, but maybe there are other methods of accessing, maybe indexing that data in IPFS, which would allow Guardian quick and easy database-like access to the data, and so the read, write, create, calculate, write again, and all of that is automatically secured by the underlying system. Yeah. Next one, please. Token rectification. Yeah.
Just to
We're
interrupt.
running out of time now.
Yeah. So one is, these were the 28 worker topics were the newer ones, and then the ones what you see now from 29 to 41 are the older worker topics which we already discussed in our last roadmap. So we would just give you a short, just the titles of it, and feel free to please let us know if you have any other suggestions or comments on these priorities.
Okay.
This is the rapid fire section.
Yeah. It's token rectification. We've got verifiable credentials, various document rectification, but we don't cover token at the moment. We may have multiple discussions, if you remember, previously about this. So yeah, that topic still stands. Moving on, please. Yes, we've discussed that. Maybe I should stop, and Prina, you just flick through, because all of those have been discussed, and we only have 5 minutes. So maybe I'll leave. I don't know if there are any questions there, Daniel, in chat, or anyone else reached out to you.
I think there was just one question. I'm not sure if it got addressed over here. There's a question regarding the disaster recovery. If there's an explanation of what is lost following a full failure.
Not data that's been public is lost. Not data, but the state of the execution of the project may have been lost. Normally what happens is, whenever Guardian receives some data from a sensor, let's say some MRV data, that data is recorded on the chain, on IPFS, and referenced on chain. And then there's certain computation maybe happens on that data, and the result again is recorded as a verifiable credential on IPFS and referenced on chain. So at certain point, a disaster can happen. And when disaster happens, let's say it happened during the calculation, mini calculation. So the verifiable credential that's been produced as a result of calculations has not been published because the calculation hasn't finished. So all the data that's been published gets restored, but you can't restart the policy execution currently. You could see where you stopped, you could see that data, but you can't just say, oh, let's continue a policy execution. But that's the explanation. But bear in mind, disaster recovery, in particular, in this situation where this limitation would occur, is a highly improbable event. It's the same as, and we still can recover from it. In Web 2, currently, if disaster strikes, mostly you can't recover. That kind of disaster you can't recover because we're talking about the absence of backups. Normally you'd create a backup, then you have a geo-replicated backup system, so in different data centers. With that, Guardian is restorable nicely, but without backups, yeah.
Okay, so we are already on time. I would just give you a short walk through, just an overview of what the other topics are, so that was all, guys. Thank you for your time. I would pass the ball to Daniel to just give a conclusion.
I appreciate everyone for joining and for sticking through. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to Andre Prino or myself. You either an email and at info@envisionblockchain.com. Yeah, if you found us on Twitter, feel free to DM us. If you are in the Slack, feel free to Slack us. There's many ways to reach out. So hope to hear from everyone soon, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.